There's a lot of treasury companies out there say that they do things. They have the right mentality, they just can't manage data. And if you open up an account for an LLC, it's not that complex. But if you open it for a TIC, it's super complex. So we do get audited.
Do you have any hacks or ways that you're like thinking about, like, how do we break resistance? How do we get into that? Because this is the market you're in.
I believe in building blocks. So all of these systems need to be talking with each other, right? Like, so you can't have data silos. You can't just say,
as a founder, that's the other hat that you have, which is more like vision based and like, where are we going? What's next for us?
Some of them want to do everything all at once, but I'm not a believer of that. I believe in doing one thing, and I believe in doing that thing really damn well.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Personally, our Persona podcast, and I'm excited to be with Batu here from Balance. Batu, welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's great to have you here, man.
It's great to be here. We've been thinking about this podcast for a while, so thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, all the way from East Bay?
All the way from East Bay. I traveled hours and days and weeks and months, but now I made it here.
You made it, yeah.
Made it to
amazing.
SF.
That's awesome, yeah. Well, before we even start to like ask the questions, I would love to hear a little bit more about your journey, because I mean, you're a founder of Balance, but you probably have done different things before. Maybe there's something between you were born and then creating Balance. Do you want to share like a little bit about your journey?
I think the thing that probably excites the people the most is Vine. So I was one of the founding engineers behind Vine.
Wow.
And actually our team at Balance is also comprised of like some of the best engineers that we worked at with Vine.
Wow. And
so that was probably the highlight of my career. We were just like, 10 people, and we built a platform that died for something bigger, I guess, like TikTok. TikTok runs on some of the algorithms that some of my friends actually created back at Vine.
Yeah.
So that was probably a highlight. And then I worked in all sorts of spaces. So EdTech, we created a company, we sold that to Apple. So we was working in Apple for a bit. And then I was in YouTube because I wanted to get back into the video space. But YouTube is YouTube, but we were leading the serving systems there. So that was a fundamental, critical system that I worked on at YouTube. And then lastly, we had like an NFT marketplace that was doing tremendously well. And that's actually how I got into treasury management.
Wow.
So that's a little bit about me, I guess.
That's amazing.
But by trait, I would say that I'm an engineer.
Wow, I love that you have like a really good background, and we could have been talking about all of that, but let's focus on cash, because I'm very curious. You were like doing very B2C from what you're saying, like the industries you're in, but then you're like suddenly thinking about enterprise cash. What made you make that shift, to come into Balance?
It's interesting, actually. I mean, I've always been interested in fintech, but like you said, it was always B2C. I think the realization really came when we were operating the NFT marketplace, because one of the problems that we had there was, we made tremendous amount of revenue from all these NFTs, all sorts of memes that we created at Vine. We sold in that NFT marketplace. We even sold Edward Snowden's files in that NFT marketplace.
What?
It was crazy. Like, we got contacted by Edward Snowden's lawyers, and it was just crazy, right?
Wow.
So we made all this money in coins, though, right? Like, so when you are making all your revenue in coins, it's very hard to pay your vendors. It's very hard to pay your employees. And so there's also the fact that coins are very volatile, right? So there's also this big challenge where how do you convert? When do you know to convert that? Because if you convert today, you might, have killed 50% of what the value of that coin is, or, do you convert tomorrow, right? So just managing those coins was very manual, and it was very labor intensive. And so that's where I started thinking about, and this was a problem that a lot of these crypto companies faced, right? So they make all their money in coins, and then how do you manage all of that? So that's where my partner and I, so Stan, we started exploring the treasury space for crypto. So that's how we landed in the treasury space.
Wow, that's okay. I love that. So wait, I want to understand a little bit more about, like, you found that the challenge that you want to tackle, but then between that and then, okay, what's going to be like that first steps? Like, how do we get into like something where we're going to talk to enterprise companies about their cash? Because I would imagine it's not an easy sales cycle, and not as fast as it would do for startups.
Definitely.
So how was that like first move?
Oof. I mean, it was tough. For someone coming in from like B2C and getting into like enterprise, it was tough.
Yeah.
But I think the thing whenever you start any sort of startup is your customers are your boss, right? So you have to understand what you're building. You have to be very intentional about it. So, I mean, I think the first 6 months to a year, even continuing today, it's been like 3 years since we started this thing. Just constant interviews, constant questionnaires, getting lots of feedback from CFOs, controllers, trying to understand, what really the pain points were and what was greenfield versus what was actually sold. And so that's, I think, how we got into enterprise. and how we got into the traditional treasury space rather than the crypto space. Because we noticed that crypto was, first of all, in a downturn at that time. But it wasn't just that. It was more so the opportunity and the greenfield that we saw in the enterprise space. Because fundamentally, there's a lot of treasury companies out there, that say that they do things. They're either really feature rich and they just don't work, or they have the right mentality, but they just can't manage data. And so I think one of the biggest things that I learned while I was at YouTube was, so we were leading like the serving system. So basically we're sitting on top of all of YouTube's data. And so managing a lot of that, managing all of it really. And so I thought to myself, you know what, like I know how to manage data. So this is a field that we can get into, like, because the data feeds that you get from banks or like the data sources that you're provided by Plaid, by Finicity, Akoya, MoneyKit, like all of these providers are claim to be robust, but in reality, there's a lot of gaps between the data. There's a lot of freshness issues. There's a lot of corrupt data. And fundamentally, your job is to figure out how to make sense of that data. Because if somebody's paying you that much money to, use your treasury platform, you better make sure that, you're giving them the right metrics. So that's really how we got into it.
Gotcha. And you mentioned like obviously some of them having like all this claim to be like future proof or like robust solutions are not necessarily are there. I know that with Balance you work with this like smart sweeps. Is that one of the ways like you can optimize for cash flow, or how does that work? I would be very curious to hear.
Of course. I mean, I think so smart sweeps is one, but what I want to really double down on is a lot of these companies out there, I think they've been founded by, folks that have been in finance for a long time. So they really understand what the problem is. But in terms of building a product, in terms of managing all that data, I don't think they have the right expertise, right? And so that's where I think we had this opportunity to come in and to build essentially like the first thing that we did was build the data layer, right? Like garbage in, garbage out. Like I love that saying because without any sort of like robust data, like, you referred to sweeps, but without knowing what your bank account balance is today, like there's no way that we could do something like sweeps.
True.
Or if your transactions are missing and they're not reconciling, well, then that spreads out through the whole product. So I think getting the foundation right was probably the first thing that we had to do. And then on top of that is where we started building like an insights layer, right? Like now that you have the data, how do you dig deep in here and then give people insights that they wouldn't have otherwise, noticed? Yeah. And then the third is, when we got into sweeps. So sweeps is basically, so should I get into detail of sweeps right now?
Please.
So the way sweeps works is this was actually a request from our customers, like our institutional customers came to us. Now we have visibility across 500 accounts across like these 30 banks that we have, but help us optimize this cash. And so everybody has these breadcrumbs that are left in their bank accounts, right? There's like this $1 million here, $3 million here, like 50K here, 100K here. And so what we do is you can come to us and with a toggle, you can say, enable sweeps, where we'll start sweeping money from your bank account into a money market fund that is owned by you. So Balance has no custody. So we're basically just the proxy layer in between the money market fund that the client owns, as well as like the operating account. So all the client says is, I want to have 100K in my bank account. And so what we'll do is if the account becomes, $1 million, we'll sweep 900K into the money market fund. And if it falls below 100, so let's say it became 50K, we'll sweep the 50K in the money market fund back into the bank account. And so what's really cool here is you get to keep your bank and you get to make interest on all of those operating accounts that you would have made pennies on.
Yeah.
And this is all really trivial to set up. Like I said, it's just like, a toggle that you just switch in our system after you connect your bank to Balance, and it just works. So I think, but again, going back to having design partners, like I think all of the logos on our site, those are all people that contributed to how this product should be shaped, because they actually understood this problem much more than we could have.
Yeah.
So I think we're very fortunate to have all these people contribute to what we've built so far.
Yeah, I love that. And you obviously mentioned like this optimizations and sweeps and making sure that the data is clean so you can operate on that. I would imagine there's also the trust layer that it's again maybe a good segue into like how are you making sure that there's no money laundering or like because there's a lot of accounts and transfers of money. So do you have the systems in place to ensure safety as well there that this is a trustworthy platform?
Of course. I mean, there's multiple dimensions to that question, I'd say. And it's the question that we get the most, right? Like the first call you get on with a CFO, like the CFO's question is, why should I trust you? How do I trust you, right? And it's a fair question, right? Like, and they have fiduciary duties. It's not even their own money that they're jeopardizing, or that they're scared to lose, right? It's like customers, it's clients. So, and it would create a domino effect throughout the U.S. If we couldn't sweep this money properly or we couldn't guard it correctly. So, I think the first layer is, how do we, as an internal system, like keep our own infrastructure, our own data, I guess, secure. And with that, we went through all sorts of audits, all sorts of like SOC 2. So we have SOC 2 Type 2 compliance, but that's just the the tip of the iceberg, I would say. Once we have that audit, we also have like black box testing, we have pen testing. But again, these are also like, I would say they're pretty naive, because like as an engineer, all the attack vectors into your system.
Yep.
So I think it's about hiring the right people with the right mindset to be able to manage all this stuff, encrypt everything in your database, have multi-tenants, have tenants per user, so that the data isn't commingled. So I think there is like the classic 101 engineering infrastructure security problem that we solved really well. And before we solved that problem and we were audited like really rigorously, we never went into like the right scenario. So like, can you actually keep the fortress safe for just the read-only scenarios was like the first, I think, milestone in our company. And once we could prove that, and we were also fine with it, our auditors, our customers, etc. Then we moved on to like the right scenarios. And when I say right scenarios, that's basically transferring money, right? And so that is the infrastructure side of things. But there is also, I think you alluded to, anti-money laundering, right? So how do you make sure that the person that you're doing business with is who they claim to be, right? Whether it's the entity or whether it's the person itself. And I think for that we use Persona. And so Persona is super flexible in the sense that our requirements are pretty. They're not like a classic startup. Like the types of entities, institutions that we work with are super complex. So like if you think about a TIC structure, like tenants in common, or like a limited partnership, essentially like a tenants in common or a limited partnership has like, could have like 40 different LPs underneath with like 40 different LLCs with like 50 UBOs. So it's like a tree. And you have to actually get to the bottom of that tree. Like you have to get to the leaf nodes in order to be able to say, the entity that I'm working with is exactly who they claim to be. And so our problem wasn't the classic KYB, KYC out-of-box solution that a lot of startups use. It was a pretty complicated one. And I want to call out that TIC and LP entity structures is something that a lot of banks don't even support because they don't want to deal with the complexity. They're like, this is too risky. This is too complicated, and I can't do this due diligence. But what's really cool about Persona is, sure, Persona didn't give us the solution out of the box, but it had the tools to give us the flexibility to be able to express all of those and to collect the right documents so that we could verify, the entity really well. We could identify all the UBOs and create like this really robust KYB and KYC pipeline.
That's amazing. I love that. And you mentioned that being as like something that even banks don't want to deal with. Do you feel this is making like a differentiator for like Balance to like now we can operate because we can offer we can offer all of that?
Exactly. I mean, I think, and this is seriously like I'm not saying it because we're on a Persona podcast, but like seriously, this is because of the tools that Persona provided. I mean, I also want to thank like our clearinghouse because I mean, at the end of the day, when you open up a money market fund on behalf of a client for a client, then they also have to be able to accept those documents, but. To be able to collect all that information in a flexible way is definitely a differentiating factor. Like, as you said, banks don't open these accounts. So like, how could we open it in a trusty way? And all of like the accounts that we do open get audited by FINRA because they're so complex. If you open up an account for an LLC, it's not that complex. But if you open it for a TIC, it's super complex. So we do get audited. And the fact that we're passing those audits just shows how robust of a pipeline that we were able to create with Persona, as well as, provide, I guess, trust along the way. I'll sum it up.
Love that. I kind of want to like double down on like your like challenges because you definitely came from like a technical background, like being an engineer, like solving for different problems. And I think there's a natural thing of engineers being good problem solvers, but that's like a more kind of compliance regulation kind of world. Did you kind of like develop that interest? Was something that was like you were forced into it? How was that like,
if you want my honest opinion, I was forced into it. I just had no other choice.
Yeah.
Because I think as a co-founder, one of the things that I always see myself doing is I feel like I'm always the person that picks up garbage, the trash around the company. Like that's literally my role. Like I'll do things that nobody wants to touch, right?
Yeah.
And we didn't really have a compliance person at our company at the time, so I had to learn all of this from scratch. And I
Wow.
think it's fine to read about it, but doing it in practice is a complete different world than like the edge cases that you run into. But what's really cool is, again, I'll give a shout out to Persona here. Like your support team. Your support team was great to deal with. Like whenever I didn't understand a specific case, like whether it was like a domain about KYB, I could just reach out to your support team and they would, come back to me in like a very short period amount of time, and we'd be chatting on, email or like getting on DMs.
Yeah.
So I think that was super helpful for me.
That's great. I love that. Yeah, shout out to our support team
No,
because
seriously,
that's
seriously.
good to hear. Yeah,
I work with a lot of vendors out there, and like having a robust support team is a big advantage.
Yeah.
And that's what makes you trust the company. That's what makes you like stick with that platform for many years.
I love that. And as you're thinking about like obviously as a founder, that's the other hat that you have, which is more like vision based and like where are we going, what's next for us. There's a lot that's changing. Obviously, you mentioned like things that you are maybe ahead of certain institutions because of how you operate naturally, but there's probably more happening, in the next 5-6 years. Do you have like anything that it's top of mind for you? Not you're like, hey, here's how maybe treasury management will be in 5 years from now, or this is how with I don't know tokenized options this is going to differ. I don't know. Is there anything that's top of mind for you now?
Treasury management is complex. It's so like I would say the definition is like, or the problem that you're trying to solve with treasury is where's my cash today? Where is it going tomorrow? And like, do I have the right optimizations? Have I set this up correctly? But it really is fundamentally a really hard problem to solve, especially when you have hundreds of banks that you work with, or hundreds of accounts with like tens of banks that you work with, spread across like different companies, entities, subsidiaries, and things like that. So you have visibility as a problem. You have forecasting as a problem. You have the transfers is a problem, like the approval process is a problem, like the cash optimization bit, right? So there are a lot of problems within this space. So I think when I look at a lot of the treasury companies out there, or a lot of the ERPs, like some of them want to do everything all at once, but I'm not a believer of that. I believe in doing one thing, and I believe in doing that thing really damn well. And so when you see a lot of these companies saying that they want to do accounting, they want to do cash optimization, like really, they can really pick one of those fields and go deep in it, because there's just so much as you carve through that whole, that depth. There's just so much that comes out of it that I think from our perspective, our bet is on cash optimization, like I said, through sweeps, because what the banks don't want you to do is they don't want you to be making interest. Like they want to be making money from your money, right?
Right.
And so when you have all these institutional clients that are like losing, millions of dollars per year because of this, we want to just be the platform where people can come to and just hook up their bank accounts and know that their money's working harder for them.
Yeah.
But one thing I want to get back to is, I said there's all these platforms that want to do everything for everyone, right? Like they claim to do everything. The thing is, I believe in interoperability. So like things need to be composable. So like, as an engineer, like I hate spaghetti code, like most of these engineers that is probably watching this, podcast. So I believe in building blocks. So all of these systems need to be talking with each other, right? Like, so you can't have data silos. You can't just say Balance is really good with cash optimization, but I don't know how I'm going to hook this up to my, my ERP system. I don't know how this is going to hook up to my accounting system.
Right.
So things need to be composable. And so what I see, Treasury going towards is, having all these building blocks. You could have different vendors for all these building blocks, but they integrate really well with each other. And that would, I think, give you like a really seamless, great experience overall, rather than saying, I just want to have this one dashboard where I can view everything, because there's just so much to digest that even from a user experience or like a product standpoint, there's no way that you can provide that type of experience to anyone.
Yeah. That's such a good point. And I guess the flip side of that would be, if you think about enterprises or like financial institutions, they tend to be more like traditional, for the lack of a better term, like more old school in how they operate. I think I still remember like receiving letters. I think it's still in the US. I receive letters for certain things. I'm like, why am I getting a physical letter for this? And I would imagine there's a lot of resistance there too. Do you have any hacks or ways that you're like thinking about, like how do we break resistance? How do we get into that? Because this is the market you're in.
Yep. I think Excel is the classic, I guess,
Yeah.
example that we can use here. With Excel, Excel is one of the best software that's written out there, right? Like anybody that throws shade at Excel, they don't know what they're talking about. Like Excel is great. Excel is great at what it does, though. It's great at being a static, snapshot of a point in time. And so the traditional resistance really breaks when you start having the freshness requirement, right? Like, is my data up to date in this Excel sheet? And so that's why I think a lot of these treasury teams, switch over to platforms like Balance. So that's really what breaks the resistance. Like, just having to copy paste all this data in and out, day and night, logging into all these bank portals, right? But that's just the tip of the iceberg, because once they, carry their Excel statements into a platform like Balance, well, then they start realizing, wow, like there's so much more that this thing can do for me. It's basically my assistant, right? So you basically get another employee, or like maybe 10 employees that does stuff that you wouldn't have even thought about. Like that just digs in deeper in like within all that data to find, insights in there, or to like be able to optimize your cash, right? Yeah. So the friction, the resistance always breaks with the freshness requirement, like I keep on saying. But once that's broken, then I think there's like this huge opportunity that people start realizing on a daily basis when they adopt something like this.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I want to double down on that, and going back to the trust factor here, because you're talking about obviously the resistance and how we're looking like a software that's is actually like a static solution, not like a dynamic. But then there's the other side of the concern, and again, to the trust on like my money being centralized in a single place. Again, to skepticism, is there anything that you're thinking about and how you address that?
Yep. I mean, in our scenario, so like I said, for our customers, we don't even pool everyone's banking data into the same tenant. Like everybody gets their own dedicated tenant, which is, which is all encrypted. So like in terms of the data getting commingled with others or like exposing that data, like we have, foolproof systems that have been battle tested and been audited and things like that. But then it becomes the question of, like I said, more higher stake actions that we're taking, right? Like with cash sweeps. So with sweeps, what a lot of, the traditional structure is really to have like this one huge account at like some grasshopper bank, a neobank, that you'll pool everyone's money, right? Like, so you'll take money, like you'll take hundreds, billions of dollars, you just pull it into the same account, and you'll make a lot of interest from that. So you'll get a cut from that, and you'll give the rest to the client. But what you're really doing there is you're pooling everyone's money together. So, and if something happens to that account where, or if your company goes bankrupt, like that account is, it's pretty risky. Let me just phrase it that way. Whereas in our scenario, like I said, Balance is just a proxy in between. So we can only move money between your account, your operating account, and the money market fund account that you own. So if you bring 10 accounts into Balance, we'll open up 10 brokerage accounts on your behalf. And those have a one-to-one mapping between one another. So you can't even do money laundering. So you can only move money between your two accounts.
Got it.
And like I said, we don't pool the money. So like if Balance doesn't exist tomorrow, Batu isn't here, I'm maybe a one bus factor, right? Well, you get to still own that account. Like that is your account that you opened at a brokerage.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a good point. And I love that you mentioned that, because that's like the tendencies, good ways in how you protect each other, so from like a bigger risk in something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so like, I think one of the first things first questions that we get about sweeps is around this. And I always give them the example. I mean, because I'm an engineer, maybe I shouldn't even be saying this, but I tell the CFOs, right? Like, if somebody got hacked into our system, the worst thing they can literally do is move money between your two accounts. Like, they can't take the money, and withdraw it into their own account, or they can't even put the money to any one of your other accounts. Like, they can only move money back and forth. So we just don't support any other rails. Yeah. And that gives folks a lot of confidence, I'd say.
Makes sense. Yeah, I love that. And are you thinking, again, maybe I know that you're solving on the, thinking about like this enterprise and the solutions for them, but not so much on the servicing, from my understanding. Do you feel there's a future of Balance going into like being more, now we know all of this data about money and all these institutions, we can help you, be that solution for you, like as a service for them, or that's like, we don't want to get involved in?
You never know how we'll evolve over time. It really has to do with needs. We do have strategies. We do have hypotheses around, how to be the best investing or like cash optimization platform for small to medium sized businesses. But again, I think the part of being part of a startup is it's like a roller coaster, right? Like, so it's so dynamic and the environment changes dramatically, right? Like we talk about interest rates going down, up. There's all sorts of like employment, rates that come out. And so there's a lot of factors that really influence what people really need. And so I think our hypotheses are, they're forward looking for, I would say, a year or two, but I would still say that we're pretty dynamic, that we would switch them. So I can't really, lock in on a single thing, I would say, on that.
That's fair. That's fair. And where are you thinking about like going next with Balance? Like what's maybe like international, or is there any other, I don't know, opportunities that you're maybe wanting to double down on?
Yeah, I think international is interesting because I think there's so much opportunity in North America, or like the Americas in general, that going international is tough because the finance ecosystem is outdated and stale. Like it's just so hard to deal with, right? And there's a lot of compliance that's added on top of it that just increases complexity by it's an exponential growth there. Like when you look at the complexity, so. We don't want to put ourselves in a spot where, we end up in like a compliance issue, or where we end up in a place where, we can't deal with the finances of that particular country. But what we are doing is we're expanding to more countries where our clients do have footprints. So like the classic example is, you guys probably know Soho Houses, right?
Yeah.
So the owner of Soho Houses is one of our clients. They're like this huge fund, and so like they have footprints all across the world, right? And so like now we're getting to manage some of their funds across in England, and so they have some presence in Canada, England, Mexico, right? So that is like a more organic way to grow into those countries. Rather than just saying, prematurely that I want to go and start this thing in France, because it's really hard to navigate that whole ecosystem. Like we just figured out the US.
Yeah.
We want to do this right for the US folks first.
I love that, because it goes back to what you said. Like you better be really good at something than trying to like spread yourself in. Yeah. That makes sense. And you came from like, again, talking a little bit about you and your future. Like you came from the B2C world, and now like the heavy in compliance, B2B world. You're probably like learning new things, and maybe things that you adopted from the B2C world into the B2B, and maybe vice versa. Anything that you kind of want to explore more for you personally to be like better at, or like the next big thing for you?
As software engineers, as engineers in general, I think we're very fortunate to be able to work in any sort of domain, right? Like I gave you the example of Vine, I gave you an ed tech example, I gave you, all sorts of, spectrums, right? And I think as we have this liberty, as this flexibility, and if you have the thirst to learn about that domain, the devil's always in the detail. So it's not as easy as saying, I want to go into agriculture next. Like you have to learn about it to be able to like deliver the right product, the right software for it. Yeah. But from my perspective, I kind of do have a monkey appetite. I guess that's why maybe I've been in like so many different domains. But I think the thing that excites me the most is learning new things that I would have never learned about, right? So you and I can have a conversation about compliance for like 3 days. If we went to a nice Airbnb and we were just chilling for I would talk to you about compliance for 3 days, right? And so that's not something that I would have ever learned about in my life or forced myself to, right? Like who sits down on a Sunday morning and instead of reading the newspaper says, I want to learn about compliance today. So we're very fortunate to have this flexibility. And what's next? I have no idea, but I'm excited about the future.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure you have like a lot of exciting things that you're going to be building, just like from your historical background and things that you're working on now. So if enterprises that happen to be listening us, they're like, hey, I think I need someone to manage my cash. What's the best way to reach to Balance? Is there like a channel they can go to, or even follow you?
Of course. Oh, thank you for asking that. I mean, so our company is called Balance Cash. Balancecash.io is our domain. So you can always visit our domain, sign up. It's all self-onboarded, but we would love it if you can also contact me directly. So I'm Batu, B-A-T-U, at balancecash.io. So just shoot me an email, and I'd love to talk to you about more about our product and if we can help you in any way. Because at the end of the day, like what we want to do is really help you. Like we don't want to create another vendor on your list of things to do and create more work for you, really. We want to make it easier for you. So if we can do that, then please hit us up.
Amazing. Love that. Thank you so much again. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for the
Thank
time.
you.
Thanks. Also, if you like this, make sure that you share this with your fellow employees, fellow teammates, and then we're gonna do more. So if you have suggestions for guests or suggestions for next topics, let me know. You can DM me in here. Thank you so much. Bye. Batu Inal is the co-founder and CTO of Balance, an intelligent treasury platform that helps enterprises optimize and grow their cash. Balance transforms idle operating cash into a source of revenue in just 15 minutes. The platform automatically sweeps excess funds from existing bank accounts into safe, high-yield investments backed by the US Treasuries, without requiring any bank changes or disrupting banking relationships. Balance has processed more than 50 billion in transactions and manages over $2 billion in enterprise accounts for leading organizations such as Beacon Capital, Menkiti Group, and the IJ Capital Partners.